Namaste to everybody, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. It is a great honor for me to be speaking on a Y20 platform again. Ancient Indian concepts for sustainability. And that is something that is getting increasingly revealed to me as I get to know the history. Of course, I started my life as an engineer, and then I started writing for a water magazine. I was the editor, and I was writing on the water issues around the world. And then I transitioned to Indian history. And they knew about the interconnectedness of the plants, the animals, the human beings, insects, worms. No being was too small that it is not a part of the whole ecosystem. So this was the profound understanding that we see. Whether we see the oral traditions or we look at our Shastras, that understanding was always there. So they knew that nobody can exist in isolation. So all these entities are contributing in some way, both good and bad. So this understanding was very deeply entrenched. For example, we knew about the water cycle. So we knew that water evaporates from all the seas and the rivers. It turns into clouds, comes back as rain. So you see that in poetry, in old poetry, you see that being talked about. So they had that understanding. And so they knew that whatever you put in your water, you put in the soil, it is all going to come back to you. So because we are all interconnected, we cannot think that we send rubbish to the water bodies or you send it to the land, you pollute anything, and then you can just stay in your bubble. They knew that that doesn't happen. So, and there was also a sense of gratitude towards whatever nature has given to us. And that is what imparted sacredness. So if you look at how we regarded the natural objects around us, we see that we actually thought of them as devatas. So the rivers were devis, mountains were also devatas. Every aspect of nature was seen in the form of a devata. And this itself shows you how our framework was very different in ancient times. So we have, in various ceremonies, we were using all these leaves and flowers, and they're given by the names are mentioned for which deity we have to use, which flower, which leaf, which natural ingredients have to be brought from the forest in order to worship a certain deity. And if you look at it, this is also a way of maintaining the biodiversity. Though they were not using fancy terms like biodiversity or sustainability, they were leading exactly the life that is needed if you want to be in harmony with nature. So all the deities which were worshipped had their own ways of worship, where you would use roots or leaves or flowers to worship them. It's only recently that we are discovering that certain plants that are very sacred to us have so many important characteristics and properties that are beneficial to humans. So one example is people. The people tree that is so sacred, right? The sacred fig, as it's called. And later research has shown that it actually gives out oxygen even during the night. So it is unlike other plants which only give out oxygen during the day. And in the night when there is no sunlight, they don't give out oxygen. But the people tree gives oxygen 24 hours a day because it has some special processes of photosynthesis which it carries out even during the night. So you can see that even if we just go into researching why certain objects are sacred for Hindus, you will find that there is some science behind it. And then, of course, we know the healing properties of neem and various other medicinal plants, which are also revered, worshipped, tulsi, all these plants. And in Ayurveda also, you will find that a whole array of plants are mentioned, their healing properties. And so how these plants need to be preserved. So you can't just keep using them, finishing them off until there are none left for the next generation. So the very fact that we know they are sacred and they are useful meant that we needed to preserve them. So I think one of the damages that modernization has done, Christianization, whatever you call it, is the loss of sacredness. So earlier, whatever we used to think as sacred, as we got more educated in the Western way, those things were no longer, it was just an organism. And we studied it in a very disconnected sort of way. the way we studied biology, right? We would look at the leaves, or we would look at it under a microscope, and then that's it. We wouldn't think of it as something magical or very sacred. So I think that is the reason why forests and rivers, all got exploited, because we started changing the framework with which we were viewing the world. Now, in fact, there are examples of indigenous people. Some studies have been done, and I feel that more of this should be done. I came across a study which was done in Meghalaya, where the indigenous people were converted. They were converted. So earlier, converted to Christianity. So earlier, there were lots of sacred groves all over India. There were sacred groves in which the entire forest or the grove was preserved, and nobody could go in because it was thought that the Devi of that forest would be very upset. So, because there was this whole culture of Grama Devatas, right, who were in charge of different kshetras. And in certain areas, forest areas, nobody was supposed to go in. And that's how these groves were preserving a lot of biodiversity. So coming back to Meghalaya, I saw a study in which when the natives converted to Christianity, then they stopped doing the various ceremonies, and then they allowed the whole forest to be cut down. So that whole forest was removed. And so in this manner, lots and lots of forests have been lost, because India had so many of them. When you read our older literature, you can see that when people went to study in various universities, they had to cross jungles, and they were afraid of the wild animals in them. So all these have been slowly removed maybe because of conversion, and as well as modernization, because modernization actually is just disconnecting us from all the oral traditions and all the story. Our history is dismissed as a myth, as nonsense, old wives' tales. So we don't give any importance to a lot of things, and so we say, okay, this is we can. So what if we cut a forest? We can plant trees somewhere else. This is another way of another kind of nonsensical thinking, that we think that if we can just remove a forest and then we can plant similar trees somewhere else, and we'll have the same effect. So we haven't understood anything about nature, which was there in ancient times. Now, I also think that when we even if we go into the root meaning of dharma itself, it is talking about sustainability, because dharma, as we know, it means that which holds, that which sustains. So naturally, when we follow dharma, our actions would lead to sustaining the systems around us, right? Sustaining all the natural cycles around us. So we would be conscientious towards the bhumi and its animals. So we didn't have a blanket understanding of anything. So, I mean, these are some of my initial thoughts. So maybe, I can just keep on talking. So I think bungalows and log cabins and everything. And then that's how that culture came. And then when they left, we continued that culture. Now every hill station that you go to is full of hotels, restaurants, houses also, and it's just looks horrible from a distance. That sanctity, and then sanctity is gone. And then the people who go there for holidays, they have no idea of visiting the temples. They're not going there for the temple. They won't even know. And how I know is that I myself was one of those people. When I was a kid and we would travel, and I would tell my mother, I would not like to go to such places, the Tirthanas. I would say, no, let's go to this place where we can have more fun. So that is how much we were colonized. And so no longer we look at that mountain with that it's sacred. And this whole concept of climbing Mount Everest, climbing the mountain, I climbed this. This was not a way of thinking. Ours was that it's sacred. What is the big thing achieved by climbing it, right? And standing on top and saying that I've conquered this peak. What kind of conquering is this? In fact, our concept was more of doing parikrama. So if there is a huge lake, then we will do a parikrama around it. Mountain also do parikrama. What is this big fad of climbing on top of it, right? Reaching the top and planting a flag on it. So that's another thing I wanted to point out, how we changed the whole framework. And then that led to exploitation of the mountainsides. All the mountains now, you need roads, you need very good roads to go there. And then that's how we have just destroyed the sanctity of all these hill stations, which used to have many beautiful temples.